Why would a Shia Muslim who joined the Islamic Revolutionary Guard of Iran, trained as a jihadi, become a follower of Jesus? What convinced him that Christianity is true, and what has it cost him in his life? Our guest today is Mohamad Faridi from Iranian Christians International. Mohamad, from the moment I heard about your story, I've been eager to have you on. Such a joy to meet you, dear brother. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Well, let's jump right in, and let's start with your family. You grew up in Tehran. Maybe just tell us a little about your family and what it was like growing up then.
Well, I was born in 1984, and it is 5 years after the Islamic Revolution of Iran. 1984, it's past 4 years of war between the two countries of Iran and Iraq. This long war between the Shia Muslims inside Iran and the Sunni Muslims of Iraq. To be exact, it is Saddam Hussein and the Ba'ath regime. These two countries, neighboring countries, they start attacking one another, and the war broke. And I was born in the midst of this war. And I remember they called our generation the generation of war. We were in the midst of bloodshed, bombs, jets, and the windows were taped with X tape to stop the explosions and shattering of these windows into our faces. So that was my childhood. What I remember the earliest, my mom would put me on her lap under her veil to protect me from what was going on. And during this time in Iran, that many Muslims voluntarily joined the war to become martyrs for Islam. My uncle, two of my cousins, they joined the war. My uncle actually had 4 small children at a time. Said goodbye to my dad, to my family, and left, and he never came back. He would never return. He died as a martyr. We call it Shahid, meaning the people that die in the way of Allah. They become a martyr for Allah. They sacrifice their life for a greater goal. And that is where I was born, in Tehran, in Iran, during a very bloody and dangerous war. And that's a type of family, the family that took a lot of pride in sacrificing their sons for the sake of Islam, for the sake of protecting the country, for the sake of a higher or a greater cause.
So as someone who's obviously an outsider, I would look at Iran and say this is a pretty religious country as a whole. Faith is important to them, and sometimes you got to separate the public from the public persona and the leadership. But if you're going to put your family on a spectrum of just, for lack of a better term, your everyday, just people living out their lives, were you kind of mid-range devoted to your practice of Islam? More so, like, where would you place yourself and your family in that spectrum?
I think we were in the sideline, secular, cultural Muslims at all. Somebody that willing to die for their faith, for their God, for their what they believe. I don't think you just call them a secular Muslim or just everyday Muslims at all. We really believed what Islam said as the truth, and we proved it by dying for it, and willing to do anything to please Allah and be accepted into Allah's I don't want to use the terminology such as family because it doesn't exist, but as people that are doing anything they can to be accepted into this religion, and then reach the standards that the religion has set for them. Whatever it is, give it to us and we will do it. And that's the explanation for my family.
Do you have a sense of how far back your family goes in Iran as Muslims? I mean, as far as you know, did you just go back century after century after century, or did maybe somebody immigrate there and it's a little bit more recent?
No, as far as we know from both sides, there are Iranians, there are Persians, they've been there, and they have always been Muslims, identified as Muslims, took a lot of pride as being Muslims, because before they said we are Iranians, before we were Persians, we were Muslims. That's how important it was. That's first our identity was in Islam and then in our country.
Hmm. Talk a little bit much as you can just about your parents. What did they do for a profession, even though this was during war? How many siblings do you have? What was that dynamic like?
I have two older brothers. My mom worked as a phone operator in a
Hmm.
hospital. Um, but as soon as she married my dad, of course, she couldn't go to work anymore. She wasn't allowed by my dad to go. My dad was a lab technician in the hospital, and that's how they met, and that's
Hmm.
how they engaged and eventually got married. And then my mom stayed home as a stay home mother.
So you grew up in obviously wartime, parents incredibly devoted Muslims, but your mom's covering her, covering you up because she obviously loved you. Do you have some good memories as a kid? Like, what did you play sports? Were you able to do some of those kind of fun things, or was it really just so affected by war that you were not able to engage in some of those things that kids often do?
Yeah, our fun activity, other than playing soccer on the streets
Mm.
barefoot with these plastic balls,
Wow.
it was going to mosque, learning how to become a soldier, and learning how to recite the Quran, learning Arabic. Most of my childhood, as much as I remember, was being in mosque and being in Quran classes and learning to um, to be a good Muslim, to devote my life, to be a pious, um, uh, a religious, good Muslim, to fulfill what is Islam wants from me. And
Mm.
that's all I remember. To be honest,
Mm.
we did uh, kids stuff, but everything was in the neighborhood mosque. I remember, Sean, when I was 7, 8 years old, going to mosque after school. We went to do the prayers, we went to do religious duties, but they trained us. They would give us these army uniforms. They called the Basiji uniform, the voluntarily army uniforms. They would wear those to us, show us how to dismantle a gun, a Kalashnikovs, AK-47s, and things of that inside a mosque. That was part of our training. They would pretend that there is a bomb coming, this noise, this whistle that bomb has, rockets have. They would play that, and then we had to jump down and try to hide and learn how to be preparing ourselves for those type of things. And they would show us the pictures, the movies of war, the bloodshed, the sacrifices,
Mm.
the chemical bombings, the impacts of those things. This was my childhood growing up, watching those stuff, learning how to be a good soldier, and devoting my life to this greater cause of martyrdom for Islam. The culture of martyrdom, the culture of war in Islam, the culture of bloodshed and being a shaheed and dying for the sake of Allah. That was that's that's what I learned as a kid growing up in mosques and the Quran classes, and that was like um, a training that the icon, the idol of our time. When I grow up, still you can go and look on the internet. His name was Hossein Fahmide. It was a 13-year-old teenager who wraps around himself grenades and stops the tanks from invading his city by killing himself as a suicide bomber. He was the icon. He was the
Oh.
person we looked up to, that we wanted to be like him. He was all over our books as kids when we grow up uh, in the 80s, in the 90s. And that's what we wanted to become. That's who I wanted to become.
Wow. Now, in some ways, you've answered this, but maybe articulate for us how your family practiced your how you practice your faith. So obviously, I assume you're praying 5 times a day. You practice Ramadan. You were taking Quran classes. Like, walk us through what that looked like to be a Muslim growing up.
That those things that you just mentioned, those are very little things that you do as a Muslim. Islam dictates every aspects of your life. It is
Hmm.
the way you breathe, the dress code, way you conduct yourself in front of other people, what you say, what you don't say, what you eat, what foot even you use to go to the bathroom, how do you shower, everything, the proper ceremonial washing of yourself to touch the Quran, everything, every little details of your life comes from Islam. There is the major pillars. Of course, you have to pray to Allah facing Mecca and reciting some chapters of the Quran that you have memorized. But it's way beyond that. You're consumed by these religious duties. You can't even shave your beard because that's against Islam. And even how far you can grow them, or how what color they should be, or everything. So yes, you do those rituals, the major ones such as fasting and all that, but then the details of your life and things that you constantly are concerned about. For example, you do the 5 times of prayer, but you have these beads that you repeat, chant the name of Allah throughout the days. You just say these things in Arabic that you have memorized that supposedly will add points to the right side of the scale. That's part of it. And then you take the Quran and you constantly memorize the Quran, because they believe that if the Quran, which is the holy Allah's revealed word, if it's in your mind and it's your heart, Allah will not burn you in hell. So you try to put it as much as you could in your mind and your heart to keep it there, that you're away from the hellfire. And I would sit down and hours and hours just try to memorize as much as I could as a Muslim. As Shia Muslims, as I said, these are just the beginning of everything. As Shia Muslims, where we lived in the apartments in city of Tehran, right next to our door, there was this man who was a very religious man. His house was dedicated to the morning ceremonies of the Shia imams. I explain what this means. So the self-claimed prophet of Islam had a son-in-law because he couldn't have sons. His daughter married a man by the name Ali. He's the most important. The Shia believe that he is the first caliph, or the first leader of the rightful leader of the Shia Islam. And this man died with a sword to his head. I'm talking about Ali, while he was doing his prayers. So we, in order to approach God in Islam, especially in Shia, we just don't directly go and talk to Allah or talk to Muhammad, because those are much higher levels of spirituality. But for us to connect to Allah, to be approved by Him and earn His acceptance, we connect to Ali, and then Ali connects us to Him. Ali is the medium. So we ritually mourn for his death and the death of his sons, which is Hussein, Hassan, and it comes to Sajjad and many of them. 14 centuries ago, they died. Today, in their anniversary of death, we mourn, wail, cry, ritually mourn for their death. It just like happened yesterday. So this man dedicated, this rich man that was a merchant in Tehran, he dedicated his big house to this cause. And the time of this ritually mourning, I would just walk out of our home and go to his home, and then they would recite these eulogies. The man would gather. Of course, it was only man. It happens mostly in the evenings. So after the evening prayer, when it's dark, would gather in his home. Every place in his house, because it's time of mourning, it was covered with black banners and the name of Hussein and Hassan and these imams that they died. And then the leader, the sheikh, the person who leads this ceremonial self-flagellations and the ceremonial mournings, he would recite a eulogy describing what happened, for example, during that day, and what caused the death of that person, that imam. And that's a very sad story. And he describes it really in details during that eulogy. And then he starts chants the name of that person. So first of all, he provokes the crowd by wailing and crying for what a tragic thing has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you're in that environment, then you start chanting the name of that imam, that specific person during that time. For example, let's say it's Hussein. So you start shouting Hussein, Hussein, and you're half naked. This eulogy, the song he's singing has a rhyme, has a beat, and he provokes by hitting himself, and then you start hitting yourself, chanting the name of that person, and then you start beating your chest to a degree that you bruise actually your
Mm.
chest. And sometimes you start bleeding by hitting yourself and mourning for this dead imam, chanting his name in order to connect to this dead person that connects you to Allah.
Mm.
That's part of this ritually mourning, to add good points and trying to, because the belief is if you just cry for these people and you show how you appreciate of them, they become the medium, the intercessor between you and Allah.
Mm.
And when the day of judgment shows up, if this person which has a specific special place with Allah, he may grant you approval, he may grant you um, um, salvation, if you would call it. There is no such words
Okay.
in Islam, but he would get you into the presence of Allah or to the paradise because he has a special place with him.
How much was kind of the emotion of fear central growing up? Fear that you would maybe die as a martyr, fear that you would maybe not please Allah, fear that you would maybe let your family down who so valued that. Was that a dominant emotion or experience for you or no?
Give me 1 second. I actually have the flag that we
Oh,
flagged our back with it. Let
get
me
it.
actually.
Yeah. Okay, so we just paused this cuz you went to go get something you wanted to visualize for us.
Mhm.
Show us what you got and why it's important.
So going back to that self-flagellation ceremonies of beating yourself with your hand, you also have something like a flag that has this chains to it. This thing is probably 2 pounds, and then sometimes you, because it's not painful enough, when you hit this thing which into your back, it
Mm.
has tremendous weight and it causes a lot of bruising and bleeding. But if for some of us that we didn't think that we have gone far enough, we would hang up pieces of rocks or screws or glasses, sharp item, and hit our back
Mm.
as hard as you could to tear up our back, to bring um, that punishment to our backs, to our body, in order to humiliate our bodies, to shed our own blood in order to be accepted, to be approved by Allah, in order to be sanctified of the filth of this world and this thing. So this is what we use as a flag to beat our back. So I thought it would be good to show you guys what I have
Oh,
gone through as a Shia Muslim.
oh my goodness. Now, I really appreciate you taking the time to show that. I'm sure it brings back some memories that are obviously not pleasant and still with you. Was fear a dominant factor for you? Whether that was fear disappointing your parents, fear of dying in jihad, fear of not pleasing Allah, like how central was that in the practice of your faith in your life?
Everything in Islam, everything, it's based on fear.
Hmm.
You're constantly are in massive fear of this judgment that is to come, Allah's punishment, fear of not being accepted and approved, fear of this. They say that between this world and the next world, there is this narrow bridge that is as sharp as a blade that you will walk on it to cross over. And if you don't make it on the other side, you will fall into the pits of hell, according to Islam. So, uh, to pass from this life to the next, there's this narrow bridge, and there's so much gruesome pictures, preachings, teachings about this narrow path that Islam has for you to cross from this to the paradise of Islam. And you're constantly afraid that I will be one of them that will
Mm-hmm.
fall down. The fear of grave, supposedly when you die, there is two uh, genies that they come. Their name is Nakir and Munkar. These people come to this grave to ask you questions, and it's terrifying, the things that the tapes I've listened to as a child growing up, that the people supposedly had this Muslim scholars, they had this afterlife experiences, going through the fear of grave, fear of death, fear of these two genies, asking them these harsh questions that they didn't have answers, and they were bound to hell. That's everything in Islam is controlled by fear. Everything is all of the motivation in Islam is fear.
Hmm.
Fear of um, one day I I ever make it to this paradise of Islam or to this eternal life, and be the greater fear is to be expelled from this punishment that Allah has for me as a Muslim.
Now,
So I
before
would
we,
do all of these self-flagellations, beating myself, punishing my body
Hmm.
tremendously, to just try to deal with all of this, and to have more points on this scale that hopefully I'm going to outweigh the bad deeds and survive the punishment of Allah. So let me punish myself now to expel myself from the
Hmm.
punishment is to come.
Now, I want to talk about you joining the Islamic Revolutionary Guard of Iran, but is there anything else? Because you were 19 years old, so if I'm doing the math right, this is around 2003, interestingly enough, about
Mhm.
2 years after 9/11. So culturally, that's a really interesting moment. But before we get to that, is there any other people or experiences in kind of your childhood up to that stage that are important in just kind of telling your story that we maybe missed?
There are a whole lot other things that I have done growing up. One of them is to go to the pilgrimage sites, or the pilgrim sites inside Iran. Shia Muslims, they do have the shrines of this dead imams that they have died, and they're under their tomb. They have built this beautiful gold um, shrines that you could go there and you do your pilgrimage, the smaller pilgrimage there. And I would travel from Tehran to city of Qom. I would travel from Tehran to city of Mashhad, to the
Hmm.
second most important shrine in Iran, to go there, or in all of the Muslim world, in Shia Muslim world. I would travel there and bind myself to this window, to this gold doors of this shrine, that I could be connected. And I would call myself the dog of that Imam. And
Hmm.
not kalbul rughaya in Arabic, meaning I'm the dog. I would crawl on my knees and my elbows before I didn't find myself worthy to walk toward it. And whenever I backed up, I would back up facing it and put my hand on it to show how appreciative of you I am, and how respectful I am for you. And that was we would go around, and nights after nights I would stay up doing my prayers, doing my devotions, to show I'm dedicated. I want to know that I can
Hmm.
connect, that I want to see, that I want to be um, sure of what is going to be my future, my eternal life as a Muslim. That's part of our training. I mean, part of our rituals that we did as Muslims.
Okay.
And I would go. There's a well in South Tehran, in another province called the city of Qom. That the belief is that the 12th Imam is hidden in that well inside
Hmm.
the country of Iran. His name is Imam Mahdi. Supposedly, Mahdi is the hidden figure, because the world didn't um, um, wasn't worthy enough to keep him. So Allah took him and put him in hidden, and he's in this well, and he will come back and rescue us. So I would go to that well and write letters, write my prayers. Of course, you had to buy the papers because
Wow.
the paper had to be holy. I would write my prayers and then would throw it down this well, and waiting for him to reply, to respond back to me. And I never heard from him.
So at this
I
time,
always had this anticipation, Dr. Sean. I always
ah,
had this anticipation that
mm,
one day I would see something. There would be
mm.
a sign. I would have that one day, but I never came close to it.
So I did think of one more question before you entering in the army that I think will help us out here, the Revolutionary Guard. Did you know any Christians? Did you know any Jews? What was your perception of America and Israel at that time, at like 19 years old?
So during the 2001, September 11, 2001, I was a Muslim. And when the towers came down, they showed it on the Iranian TV, and they shouted Allahu Akbar, the victory for Islam.
Hmm.
And I went as a Muslim to the mosque of the neighborhood, and we stopped the cars on the streets and we distributed candies and cookies celebrating this victory over the great Satan, America.
Hmm.
That was who I was as a Muslim. And this things that we saw about America, Israel was, um, we said, first comes Saturday, then the Sunday, meaning we'll take the Jews out first, and then we'll get rid of the Christians later. And if it wasn't because of the great Satan, we would have dealt with Israel a lot sooner. And we had these ideas, these evil ideas that America is corrupting the world and it needs to be dealt with, and Israel is corrupting the world and it needs to be dealt. And until we don't, as Shia Muslim, create that chaos, create that jihad,
Hmm.
create that war, Mahdi will not come back. The Imam Mahdi, the one that is in the well, he will not come back. So that was our responsibility to create those chaos, war with these people, and then supposedly causing this apocalypse for the return of Mahdi to prepare the way for him as Muslims. And that
Hmm.
was my view of Israel. That was my view. I was a hateful Muslim. I hated the Jews. I hated the Christian. I remember, brother, when I was growing up, I was going to elementary school, and my mom would say, for example, in this neighborhood there is a Jew live, and this is not like it was a fact. It was just a idea. It was just maybe a myth that somebody, it was a Jew, lived in that neighborhood. And as a Muslim, because I didn't want to be unclean, passing where the Jew passed, I would go around, added another mile or two to my walk toward the school just to avoid that neighborhood. I had such a hatred in my heart growing up because I thought that everything that was going wrong in our nation, it is not because Islam is bad. It is not because we messed up. It is because Israel is causing it. The Jews are manipulating. The Jews are controlling the world, and blah blah blah. And that was how I grow up, and
Hmm.
that's the type of feelings, which was absolutely hatred toward the Jews. And the TV, the Iranian TV, actually would show how um, the Israeli soldier mistreated the Palestinians and the Muslims, and
Hmm.
the, this was just right in our face growing up as kids.
So at 19, you join the Islamic Revolutionary Guard.
Mhm.
What was that training like? How long were you in? What were you hoping to accomplish by being there?
So it is military service is mandatory in Iran,
Hmm.
and I finished high school. They take you to a military base, and then they disperse from there or dispatch you from there, and they put you in different lines, and then they say, okay, these guys are Revolutionary Guard, these are the police, these are the army. And I was selected gladly when I had the opportunity. I joined the Revolutionary Guard of Iran because I was religious. I know the Islamic Revolutionary Guard is was created by the Islamic regime to protect the Islam inside Iran and export it outside of Iran, the
Hmm.
version that we believe to be the truth. And during the boot camp, they took us to southern uh, deserts of Iran, and the training was absolutely horrible. It was really rigorous and hard, and um, but um, we learned how to shoot guns and things of that nature. Let's say that was a part of the training, but the greater training was how to be a Muslim soldier. And there's a movement. It still goes on till today as I'm talking. It's called On the Path to Light. So The war happened between 1980s and 1988. So now it's 2003. I'm in military, but we don't want to forget what has happened. We don't want to forget what is the cost of dying for Islam. What is the cost? What is the privilege to die as a martyr, like my uncle and my cousin? So, and
Mm.
all those martyrs, those lives that have lost, what a great things they have done. What a great um, purpose they have accomplished. Now, many years afterward, it is just like it happened just a few days ago.
Mm.
They want to keep this right in your heart and your mind. You cannot separate yourself from this as a Muslim man. That I'm a soldier for Islam. I'm a soldier for Allah. I have been called. I have been destined to be a sacrifice for Allah and His
Mm.
causes. So, as a soldier, put us into this buses. We traveled from the city that we were in to western southwest Iran to the region of Khuzestan, which is borders with Iraq, and that's where the majority of the physical war happened. That the soldiers were killing one another, and the invasion was on the ground. So, and that's they took us in those areas. They showed us what it took, the areas, the empty tombs and the graves of those martyrs, that they
Mm.
laid them there in mass graves all over the place. And part of the training was that during the night, when it's pitch dark, there's absolute silence.
Mm.
They put us in those empty tombs and graves individually, and we would sometimes even wear a white cloth, because that's what they put the
Wow.
shaheeds. They wrapped him in this white cloth and they put him in those empty tombs and graves. They put us in those, and then you're laying down in this narrow, deep grave of somebody that died, that was buried there. And now your hand is on this. You're looking up absolute utter darkness. There is
Huh.
no noise. You can see nothing. If you put your hand here, you won't see him. That's how dark it is. And the feeling is just this: the walls of this grave will collapse on me, and I would be buried alive. And that's how they trained us to fight the fear of death.
Wow.
And then they would say that we need to reunite your spirit with the spirit of martyrdom, with the spirit of jihad. And that was part of our training. That was part of that movement that still goes on inside Iran. And then when I came back, even when I come to visit my family, I was a different person. I went through all of this, and then I went to another level as a Muslim. And I remember that in the 19th of the Ramadan, which is 19th, 21st, and 23rd of Ramadan, those are the days that the belief is that Ali, the son-in-law of the self-claimed Prophet of Islam, died in one of those days with a sword to his head. So I would get a sword and cut my head, and to commemorate his death, to unite myself with his death, that I be accepted by Allah, and I would shed my blood. The first time I did it, I knelt in front of an imam, uh, which he was the Sufi Shia version of
Mm-hmm.
Muslim. He would do this meditation, long meditation. Supposedly, he was extra holy. So there was a line of a young man such as me. I was 19 and a half, maybe 20 years old. I stood in this line, and then we were chanting the name of Ali, repeating it: Ali, Ali, Ali. And he would raise the sword and slam it to the top of my
Mm.
head. And several times he did it. I never forget how it felt that first time. It just like I heard it inside my head, the strikes of this sword to my head. And after he was done, I was soldier, so I had a little bit of hair. I touched my head and I looked at my hand. I had chopped hair. That sword was so sharp, chopped my hair and cut my skin and hit the bone of my skull. And I saw blood was running on the side, both sides of my head. And that was how I was trying to please Allah. I was trying to earn His approval. I wanted to be accepted by Him, and I would do all of these things to know that I've been approved.
So one more question before we get to where things start to shift for you. I was reading an article in the New York Times recently, and it talked about how much of Iran is becoming secularized, doesn't hate America. It's far more kind of the leaders and a few extremists. Do you agree with that? And how many then and now would kind of practice the level of Muslim faith that you're describing that you practiced?
I saw a survey myself that was done in 2020, an organization in Netherlands called Gaman, and that surveys just they're like the Pew Research of the Iran, and they surveyed 50,000 Muslim who live in Iran, and less than 33%, less than one third of the Iranians claim to be Shia Muslims anymore. The
Mm,
turn away from Islam is true. It is happening inside
mm,
Iran, and actually, it is a thing that because um, 45 years ago, when Iranians came on the streets shouting "Death to Israel, death to America, death to the king and the rich, the monarch, the Shah of Iran," and they thought Islam would be the answer, and that was what happened for 45 years ago. They came to distribute wealth from the rich, which was the king and his people around him. They said, "We're going to get the money, remove this current system, we remove this king out of his power, and we redistribute his wealth according to Islam." And they did that, and they removed the king, but then we had the Ayatollah. So wealth was transferred from the king to the Ayatollah, and the Ayatollah was thousands of times worse than a secular king. And that the redistribution never happened, even though they promised it to the Iranian people. The utopia that now we're dealing now in the West with it, it happened in Iran 45 years ago. The university students that they came on the street to um, be getting this wealth and redistributing it according to Islam, but everything is going to be beautiful, everything is going to be equal, everybody has going to live a very good life under the Islamic communist Marxist utopia. That those messages that we will give you free electricity, free universities, free transportation, we will sell the petroleum and bring it to your tables. Every single of those slogans, every single dose of those promises have been failed. The Iranian
mm,
people, Iranian tasted it with every cell in their being. The Persian Iranian have tasted what Islam is and what it stands for. So they have turned away from it
mm.
in masses, and that is the failed promises of the Islamic utopia of equality and equity has turned to this, that we have been one of the worst countries economically in Middle East, completely disconnected from the world. Our passports are good for 2 3 countries such as Afghanistan or Pakistan or
Mm.
Iraq, and we have no reputation. Everything, every time you see a war or a problem in Middle East, it is Iran, and we are financing, instead of the Iranian families, we are financing Hezbollah and Hamas and um, so many terrible Islamic extremist movement outside of Iran. And the Iranian people, they thought by putting these Islamists in power, their lives is going to be better. Their life didn't get better; it got worse. And then now, instead of we as Persians being the people who championed the Jews for um, protection, we championed the Jews during King Cyrus's time, to sending them back to their land and helping them with building the wall and the Western Wall, the Western Bank wall, and all that. Now we are the number one enemy,
Mm.
and every bad news in the world, it seems to go in Tehran, Iran, and Iranians saw it, Iranian felt it, Iranian tasted what Islam is truly, and they're turning away from it. And I believe that's what you see, what is happening in Iran.
So let's go back to your story. You've described where you were at 19, 20 years old. I mean, you are seemingly about as committed and determined to please Allah as possible. Did you get to kind of a breaking point? Did someone introduce Christianity to you? Take us the next step in your story.
I want you to noticed that I never heard anything good about Christianity. I never heard
Mm,
anything good about the Jews. So Islam was the perfect religion. Islam is the absolute truth. This is what every Muslim anywhere in the world today
mm,
hears. Islam is the best. Muhammad is the culmination or the seal of the prophet. Everyone who came before him, they have failed, including Jesus, including Moses. They failed their missions that Allah sent them. Therefore, Allah sent the last of the prophet, which is Muhammad, to come and complete the failure of the other prophets. That's why Islam, the perfect religion, and all the other religions are corrupt. That's what I heard growing up. So you don't have any access, of course, in Iran or
mm,
any Muslim countries to Bibles. If the book is corrupted, they have been telling you it is corrupt. Why would you go ever try to read something corrupt? You have the best. When you have the best, why would you go to a lesser or a worse religion? You don't. So everything I heard growing up, which was very little, that little was very negative. And now I'm you would call it a Muslim extremist in the West. You would call it a radical. Um, but I was just practicing my religion and I believed what it
mm,
said as a Muslim. That's who I
mm,
was. I finished my military service and now I have a purpose. Now I have a goal to become a martyr for Islam. I have this idea of um, one day I hope I get the honor to die for Islam and give that honor to my family because it brings
mm.
tremendous honor to your family. And in a culture that is all based on honor and shame, that's all you want to do, bring honor to your family. And I'm few months after my military service, I'm trying to uh, get this one day get this honor that we have a war, we have a fight, there's sending of soldiers into some areas that I could get killed. That's my goal, and that's my thing that I imagined as a 21-year-old. And um, the turning point in all of this story is when I tried to get caught up with a friend, an old friend of mine, who we grow up together. This man, his name is Rasul. Rasul means the apostle. He has the
Mm,
title of the self-claimed prophet of Islam, and I have his name, Muhammad. We grow up together. His mom and my dad actually worked in the hospital. They both were lab technicians. So since we were 6 years old, he's 3 days older than me. He's 1984, but 3 days older than me. And on and off, we went to school actually together. And the 12th grade, we were together. I was morning student, he was afternoon student. And but when we went, we were. But when it was time to go to the military service, because he had flat feet, he was medically exempt.
mm.
So I went to the military service. He didn't. Now I'm back. I want to get caught up with him. I called him. I said, Rasul, what are you doing? And he said, I want to come see you. I said, sure. I went and I had a motorcycle, went, picked him up. And
Hmm.
10, 15 minutes to our conversation, I realized my friend is different. He looks the same, but he doesn't act the same.
Hmm.
And there was such a peace about him. It felt like something coming, a light, a peace that comes out of him and is touching me. It just bothered me. God knows this is not a joke. I really thought he has used a drug. It's something. He's under some influence. It cannot be
Huh.
somebody that's so calm and mellow.
Hmm.
And I said, Rasul, what is going on? What have you done today? And then I kept pressing on him, and he said that he became Christian. And I said, became like. Let me try to describe this a little bit. In Islam, one of the uh, articles of faith is fate,
Mm.
predestination to the degree that is fate. You don't get out of your fate. This is the divine Allah has given you this fate, and you cannot get out of it. You're born a Muslim, you die a Muslim. It's just you don't you can't change that your fate. You're bound to this. You're chained. And when he said he became Christian, it just messed up with my theology. It just was I was What are you talking about? So we argued. Everything I knew about Islam, I was thrown at him, but he just calmly, very calmly, just described about Jesus, what Jesus has done for him and his family. And this heated, lengthy arguments and conversation went for about at least 2 hours.
Hmm.
And we were both, I think, exhausted, but he never lost his peace and he just kept his calm. And it wasn't the same guy because I know him. He would fight. He was a nasty student. He was very
Hmm.
tall, and when we played soccer in the school or something like that, I would start a fight, and then he would come and finish it off for me. So he was much bigger than me physically, but I cannot taunt him. He's not provoked. It just was strange to me. And then after about 2 hours of this conversation, he said to me, Muhammad, didn't you ask, brother, didn't you ask, what is the reason of this change? I'm telling you, it is Christianity, it is Christ. And I have to get going, but I want to tell you this before I go. Jesus was bruised, he was beaten, he was cut. They crucified him, his precious blood was shed for your sake. And if you believed in him, he'll die for you. He has died for you. He has given up his life for you. And if you believe in this, you will have eternal life. Dr. Sean, this is the best thing I've ever heard in all of my life.
Hmm.
Best thing. There is nothing better than this. There is nothing that I have ever heard that could even be comparing to this, what I heard from Rasul. When he said that, it wasn't an intellectual argument anymore. It wasn't a mind battle anymore. Something went to my heart. God knows I felt so naked before a holy God. I felt I have nothing to give him, nothing to offer him when I heard the gospel. It seemed like that this cloud of deception that was around my head, it was just tore off, fell off.
Hmm.
Everything I was trying to do as a Muslim, as a Shia Muslim, every little thing I was trying to do to please God, by self-flagellating myself, cutting my body, bruising my chest, bruising my back, getting a sword to my head, willing to die for Allah, to have eternal life. Every little deception and lie that I was operating under, it just like broke off of me in that moment when I heard the gospel.
Hmm.
And I had nothing to offer to God. I realized. And I fell on my knees, begged him, begged Rasul. I said, please tell me what I need to do.
Hmm.
And he said, close your eyes. I want you to repent from your sins and accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And that's what I did. I closed my eyes. I said, God, forgive me. I cannot help myself. Would you change my life? Would you become the Lord of my life? And I opened my eyes. God knows I saw colors for the first time in all of my life. I looked around and I said, my God, what just happened? Look at the colors, everything. It was a dimension added to life that didn't exist before that.
Hmm.
And that is what, when I heard the gospel, that's a little bit of what happened to me after after accepting Jesus, my Lord and Savior.
Well, that is powerful and obviously very dramatic. Rasul witnessed this. Who did you go tell somebody else? Like, you must have been excited about that. Did you go share with others? How was that received? Keep going.
After everything was good, everything was beautiful, everything was amazing. After my conversion, the weight was lifted off my shoulder, lifted off. That burden, that heavy laden, that weight I carried to please God, that was off. And that peace that Rasul had, it just entered my life. I was always in a brawl with myself. I was always in this fight with myself and with this world. I was in a war to keep God happy with me, satisfy him. be pleasing to him. This war came to an end that moment. And I felt that peace that surpasses all understanding in that moment. And I knew something changed because I could see different. Life came to me. And after this was very good, stayed the same till Rasul left. I had to go drop him off, and then after he left, I thought to myself, going back to home, if this Christianity, if this what happened to me could happen to everyone else, why nobody has told me this? Why somebody didn't tell me a long time ago, if this could happen to somebody, that you could be accepted on the basis of someone else's work. And this was the first thing. And then the second thing is, if this is what Jesus has done and this is the truth, therefore Islam cannot be true. And who I have been, and my family, the society, all can be a lie. Then it's all according to a falsehood. And this really messed up with me. I mean, to the degree that I thought to myself, before I make anything, any sorts of announcement, anything that has happened to me, share it with anybody, I have to be assured of this. I have to know really Jesus has died for me. What he said, what Rasul shared with me is the truth before I make the announcement. And I have to make sure that this Islam that I was under, as identity, as a religion, as a society, as a family, I have to figure this thing out. So the crisis happened after my salvation. After accepting Jesus as my Lord and Savior, the crisis happened. And I went on this journey to make sure what that encounter, that thing, that day, that moment is actually true. It's not emotions. So I went on this journey. And a couple of weeks later after this, Rasul, my friend, said we need to go to a church. And I've never gone to a church. I didn't know they existed in Iran. For the first time in my life, I'm going to the church. I had so many reservations. Imagine all of your life they have been telling you Christians are unclean. If you touch him, you have to wash yourself in a ceremonial ways, or you cannot pray. And now I'm going to a place that everybody is a Christian, is called a church. So I was very uncomfortable. And I'm going to this church in the city of Tehran in the square of Van Eyck. And of course, the security doesn't let us through. Rasul is talking to them. And then finally, we went through. I got through the first phase of the church. And then now I saw the sanctuary. This has this oval, beautiful wooden gate. And Dr. Sean, as soon as I stepped inside the sanctuary, what I tried to describe in my limited English vocabulary would be really difficult, but I try my best. It was this cloud of mercy of God, this cloud of presence, holiness, love of God that just grabbed me with all of its being. And I was just wrapped in this amazing love of God. And I did not feel my weight. I did not feel need of the oxygen. None of that exists. I just was in the best position somebody could possibly be. It was tangible, but you couldn't see it. It is more real than this world that I'm living in now. But you couldn't just say you can see it. I was wrapped in the presence of a holy God. And as I was in this, 2 times inside my heart, I heard it. You're home. You're home. It was that sound that calms you, gives you all the assurance you need to have. And I was enjoying this presence of God, and It's amazing what your mind can do in the situations. As I'm exploring, looking at, enjoying this, the presence of God, the peace that is with me, I looked on the walls of the church, and there's small banners says, to respect the presence of God, turn off your cell phones. And I thought to myself, my mind now, it's kicked in and says, presence of God here in this building. I'm an unholy person. God is a holy God. How could be in the same place? But at the same time, I cannot deny the presence that is with me.
Hmm.
So I'm in this battle. I sat in the back of the pew of the church, and the church starts, and um, people come and fill these pews of the church, and then um, the preacher, the person, the clergy comes and walk up there, and then reads the Psalms, and then the worship starts. They're playing the organ and the piano, and somebody is playing guitar, and people are clapping hands. It was so unknown to everything
Hmm.
I knew at that moment. It was so strange and
Hmm.
odd. They were clapping hands, worshiping, celebrating. I'm like, what are these crazy Christians doing? Every time, every single time, as a Muslims, we gathered, we mourned for the dead, and we ritually tore up our bodies, shed our blood all over the place. I have been in ceremonies, Dr. Sean, of Muslim cutting themselves,
Hmm.
and the blood, I have walked in it up to 2 inches of my ankle. That I have walked in it, 2 inches of blood of the people that they have cut themselves to self-flagellate to be sanctified or accepted by Allah. Now I'm in this church, they're clapping hands and singing. What's wrong with this? And then everything, because I'm on this journey of figuring this thing out, I'm carefully listening. The verses of the song said, yes, he did it for me. Yes, he did it for me. He
Hmm.
left heaven. He gave up his glory. He gave up his kingdom. Yes, he did it for me. He came down to earth. He died as a servant. Yes, he did it for me. And then the most amazing thing, the verse that song was, yes, he did it for me. He also rised from the dead. And yes, he did it for me. I said, that is why they're celebrating, because the dead
Hmm.
didn't stay dead. The resurrection, the
Hmm.
afterlife, and that's what they're looking forward to. There is a resurrection. There is a hope that is missing in all of the Islamic world. That's why we have shrines everywhere. Somebody dies, in order to prove to you that he's dead, to remind you that he's dead, they build that shrine. But he has raised even from the dead. So I was trying to figure this thing out, and after the worship and the sermon, the Christians were smiling and they were nice, and I was creeped out, and I was like, why are these people doing this? They don't know me. Why are you smiling at me? You don't know this till you live in a Muslim country. People don't have peace. They don't smile at one another. You don't
Hmm.
stare at somebody in Middle East. You start a fight. And that's why when you look at a Muslim, they just look away because they can't. They don't. And now I'm in this church, people are looking at me, smiling at me. It just every I was in another planet, not in another world. It just I went to another dimension. And these
Hmm.
people are so calm and nice. And then we went downstairs to have coffee and tea into the library of the church, which was downstairs. And my friend, out of his pocket, bought me a New Testament. I didn't know as there was such a thing as a New Testament or Old Testament. It said Injil, meaning the good news, the Injil Isai Masih. So, and then my friend gave me this book to me in Farsi and said, the book that is illegal in Iran. He said to me that this has been written for you, and if you go and read it, it will change your life. And I looked at my friend Rasul, he's tall, so I looked at him like this and I said, living word of God written for me? I mean, I, everything was different. Everything what seemed crazy. So I took the book. I'm on this journey to figure this out. I took the book home, and Friday is the day off in the Muslim world, in Iran especially. So Friday we went to church, and then till the next Friday, um, I went through Matthew, Mark,
Mm,
Luke, and John 5 times each. I could not
mm,
put the book down. God knows I have never read anything better than that. It
mm,
is amazing. And the the majority of change came from the book of Matthew. The very thing that actually um, dismantled me. It just like um, everything that was locked into me, it was unlocked by Jesus from the Sermon of the Mount, chapter 5, 6, and 7. And then he put the nail in my coffin of theology in verse 28, 29, 30 of the 11th chapter in the book of Matthew. And I was reading Matthew, and I was reading, you have heard tooth for tooth, eye for eye. I tell you, I am like, this, what did he say? Tooth for, how did Jesus know about Islam?
mm,
And I was thinking to myself, he came prior to Islam, 6, 7 centuries before Islam. How does he know about Islam? I keep describing to make sure, because I didn't have any knowledge of Torah or what Moses says. I thought this is Islam that tells you tooth for tooth, eye for eye. If they cut your hand, you cut their hand. If they steal your TV, you just go punish them for what they have done. You just repeat that. If somebody kills somebody, they kill them, they hang them. So life for life. And he says, but I tell you that love your enemies, turn the other cheek. I'm like, how does he know about Islam? And then I go read about the repetition. He says, when you pray, don't think you will be heard for your repetition. I'm looking at the book and I'm like, how do you know we were doing repetitions? Subhanallah,
mm,
subhanallah, 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 Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Hours and hours of repetition. And he says, don't think you will be heard for your repetition, because that's a pagan practice, he says. And I said, what? And then when he says, if you fast, don't show it to people. Anoint your hair and with oil and look good when you fast. Paraphrasing, making it to our language. When you fast, don't look sad and weakly and I'm fasting. People see me. I'm religious. I'm pious. He says, don't do that. It is not for people. It's for God. If you do that, you're a hypocrite. And
mm,
I'm reading all of that's everything I'm doing as a Muslim. Everything I've been doing as a Muslim. I was fasting to show it to the people. I was doing the repetition. I was all about revenge. And now he says, when you pray, it's between you and God. Go to your closet, close the door, and in a private place between you and God, you do that. Don't go in the public and do it. And I said, God, I got so mad at this book. I said, somebody has been walking around studying my life and wrote this book for me. That's what he said. My friend Rasul said, this book has been written for you. How does Jesus know everything about Muslim prayer is doing it in public? Have you seen in London, in New York, Muslims stop their traffic, do their prayer? People see us. We're praying. They close the roads. They close the traffic. And he says, don't do it. If you do that, you have your reward from the people. But you do
mm,
it in your... I thought to myself, I've been manipulating. There's something is wrong. You cannot describe Islam before Islam existed this accurately. You can't. Every hypocrisy in Islam has been revealed, exposed by Christ, according to chapter 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew. So I thought to myself, maybe I've been manipulated. I've been been set up. I have to go expose us Christians now. God is my witness. Dr. Sean, I took my Bible, my New Testament, to the church and asked people to if it's possible, I can look at their books. And they would show me their books. I would look at mine. I would look at theirs. They looked the same. So it wasn't a
mm,
custom-made, custom-written book
mm,
for a person. I would ask them, sir, does this book talk to you? And they would say yes, and they would show the passages that talks to them. I'm like, what kind of a book is this that talks to different people differently for their different situations? And I said,
mm,
I just need to investigate this thing a whole lot. Uh, I need to take it to another level. Maybe my friend has talked to this Christian to be extra nice to me. I just go to some other place that he doesn't know about and be among Christians and see what do they say. Maybe these people, they knew I'm a Muslim who has converted to Christianity or accepted Jesus, so they're trying to be nice. So one time I didn't tell my friend, found another church, show up at that church, and it's a little Assyrian church in western side of Tehran. And there was about 20 maybe people in it, and I'm in this journey of figuring this Christian. They were nice too, and I sit in the front of the church, and the pastor, after the worship day, he comes up and he says, I want Mr. Ali to come up and share his testimony. I said, Ali? Muhammad, Rasul, and we have a Ali. God knows, till that moment, I was thinking these are the two apostates that existed in the 14th centuries of Islam. Nobody converts from Islam to Christianity or leaves its beautiful religion, Islam. So Rasul was the first person. That's what was my thought. And Rasul has led me to Christ. That's the second person. And now we have Ali. So there's the third one. I said, that's incredible. And then Ali comes up. He has a cloth around his neck, opens this cloth. It has a hole in his neck right here. And he said, I was diagnosed with throat cancer, advanced throat cancer. And the doctor gave me up. The doctors, they said they cannot do anything for me. It's over. And I spent all of my time and money in the shrines to receive healing from them. And nothing happened, but rather got worse. I was going home to die. I've been given up by the religious leaders, by the religious imams. I have been given up by doctors to die. I was going home, and I saw this cross over this building in Tehran, and I said, let me go in and try their God. So he's sharing this in front of me right there on the church. And then he comes to this church in Tehran, and then comes to the yard of this church, and there's some people in there, and says, hey, I've tried everything. I'm dying. Everything has failed me. Can I give your God a try? And the Christians gather around him, lay hand on him, and they're praying for him. And in a vision, he sees a hand with a hole, with a print of a nail, and with a hole in it, touches the hole of his throat. And he goes home. After this prayer, he goes home. And the 2 months comes up, and he hasn't died. He goes back to the doctors. You told me I'm going to die. I'm not dying. I'm feeling a lot better. They check out, and he's absolutely cancer-free. And he came back to the church telling the church that this is what has happened. The doctor says, I don't know what has happened, but Ali told those doctors, I know it is the hand with the print of nail. It is the church. It is the Christians. So now Ali has converted to Christianity, sharing his testimony. I'm watching what's going on. And I said, I have read that in my Bible. So the story of you will lay hand on the sick and they'll recover. And the story of the woman with the issue of blood for many years, that the doctors couldn't do anything, and spent all of his money, and until he touched the hem of the garment of Jesus, and he was made whole. It just, that day, the word of God became flesh in my life. And then I was already committed to Jesus, but I was on this journey. But after that testimony, I went and knelt in front of a cross, a wooden cross in the corner of the church, in the front of the church. And I said, Jesus, I'm done doubting you. You've proven to me you're well and alive, and you're doing what you've been doing for the past 2,000 years. And if it's going to take, I'll die for you. I need to lay my life down for your sake. I will do that. God knows, as soon as this came out of my mouth, I heard his voice. He said, I have died that you might live. There is no more dying. So I was a convert. I reconverted. I wanted to make sure that I'm in this Christianity thing. And from that moment on, I was just a Christian. I just didn't doubt. I just knew Jesus says who he is, and he does what he does. Only he can do. And I just quickly became a devoted Christian in city of Tehran in Iran in 2006.
Mohammed, you did an amazing job of helping me as an outsider understand how just radical going to church, reading the Bible, how radical that was to become a Christian for you. There's like part two to this where we could tell the whole story up to where you are today. But I've got a couple questions for you. How did your family respond? You mentioned having two brothers, your mom and your dad. Did you have to flee Iran at all? Obviously, some Christians are living there. What were some
Mhm.
of kind of the key next steps that happened for you?
So quickly after my conversion, I wasn't practicing Islam, and my families, especially my mom, was very suspicious because I was very involved. You could see I lived my life as a Muslim for the people, and people knew. And now they couldn't see all those activities.
Mm,
Therefore, they were suspicious. What's going on? He doesn't go to
mm,
mosque. He doesn't hang out with the same friends. And in the evening, after the evening prayers, I would come home and turn the TV on and listen to the sermons, Islamic sermons, and that didn't happen. It wasn't happening. And one time, I was in my room. I had my light off, as the Bible said. I was in my privacy, having a fellowship, having my prayers. Just I was in commune with God, and my dad just jumped in the room like kind of surprisingly, and he asked me what is going on, like what is happening. And I said, Dad, I'm praying. He was a very strong man and very, very abusive, physically, emotionally, very
mm,
abusive. And I came inside. He was a very scary man. He came inside the room and he said, "What are you doing?" And I tried to, not answer the question because I knew him. And
mm,
I said, "Nothing, nothing is going on." But he just kept pressing. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Dad, I'm praying." And then when I said praying, he kind of suspiciously said, "Praying to who?" Because Islamic prayer, as I said, it's every day the same ritual. There is no changes in it. You have your prayer rug, you have your clay that you bow to it, and you face Mecca and you say the same thing. You just repeat it sometimes 2 times, 4 times, 3 times, doesn't matter. It's the same. And now none of this happened, and I'm telling him I'm praying. So it was very foreign to him, strange, odd. And who are you praying to? He said, he asked. I answered, Dad, I'm praying to Jesus.
mm.
And I wish he would have stopped, but he never. He wasn't somebody that gives up that easily. And then he said, "Jesus, why not Muhammad?" And we had these pictures of the Imams and Muhammad inside our home, and he pointed at it. Why not Muhammad? And I was trying to be as logical and uh, politically correct as possibly could be to just not having any frictions, not having any situations. But he was asking, so I answered. I said, "Dad, Muhammad is dead. He cannot hear my prayer." God knows when I said that, I mean, you could see flames coming off of his shoulders, eyes are turning. And then he was, as I said, a strong, abusive man. I mean, he picked me up and cursing and punching me.
Mm.
And I mean, in the midst of this chaos, I mean, I pulled away and run for my life from this house. I said, "Holy cow." It's like I have given him the ultimate um, uh, exploitation reasons. And I ran away. I ran away from my life, from home. And few evenings and nights I slept on people's doorsteps and rooftops.
Mm.
And but I got beaten by cockroaches and so many weird things, people. And then eventually I got so miserable that I called Rasul, my friend who led me to this Christianity. And I said, "Rasul, this is what has happened. My dad is really," and he knows our family really. We
Mm.
family we know one another really good. So my dad is really mad, and I'm not sure if I can go back. And then Rasul told me that I can go to their home. But when I went to their home, the whole family were converts. The whole family, mom, dad, sister, everybody converted from Islam to Christianity. So the house
Wow.
was a underground church. And while my own biological family rejected me, God had a family prepared for me. So they accepted me, and I went there, and I started my underground activity, church life inside Iran with them.
Wow. That's incredible. Thanks for being willing to share that. It's just painful and difficult it would be to re-encounter some of those memories. Obviously, a lot has happened from then till your ministry today, but maybe tell us just a little bit about your Iranian Christians International, what that group is, and what you do.
So, Iranian Christians International, the ministry that I have the privilege to serve with, has been in ministry 43 years now. A year after actually the revolution of Iran, this ministry was established as the first ministry by Muslim background believer inside America. So, and the ministry started helping with the refugees with their legal cases before the world court, wherever it might be. And after the revolution, Iranian Christians started to be persecuted tremendously, expelled from Iran, and there were no organizations at the time to help them. So Iranian Christians started to help with that. That was their first mission. But later on, of course, in an Islamic country that never had a Christian history, there were no books or there were only one translation of the Bible, which was the old Farsi King James Version type of translation that is not familiar to the Iranian people today. So our ministry helped with one of the translation of the Bibles, which is, you could call it the equivalent of NIV. And also we were number one ministry which translated books from English to Farsi. For example, your dad's book, More Than a Carpenter, was translated by our ministry and distributed inside Iran. We have lost count after distributing over 1 million copies of literatures, books, tracts inside Iran. So we have way surpassed that numbers. And that's we have the ministry has introduced Christian vocabulary to the Farsi language, such as the word grace, phase in Farsi, and things of that nature that didn't exist. So the translation of books and Bibles is one of the ministry's work, helping with the persecuted Christians from Muslim backgrounds, Iran, Afghanistan, other places. Advocacy for them is one of the main things. And we do street evangelism, Bible distribution in Middle East. Actually, last 2 weeks of March, we were in Middle East. We distributed, I take a team personally, and we distributed thousands of Bibles. We did in 10 days, 6,000 Bibles were distributed. 375 Muslims gave their heart to the Lord. Iranians gave their heart to the Lord in Middle East. And the other thing that we do is discipleship and pastor training conferences that we do in Middle East. I'm actually leaving in a few days to do 2 home church planting pastor conferences in a neighboring country of Iran. And that's how we are impacting inside Iran. I personally cannot go to Iran. I can on a one-way ticket, but the impact we're doing now, it's much greater than when I was there personally, because now we're training pastors and indigenous leaders inside Iran from all sorts of background and languages that are going to Iran, and they're doing something amazing. And whatever you hear about Iran, that is the fastest growing evangelical church in the world, it is true. And we have the honor to be a part of it. And it's amazing how many people are converting from Islam to Christianity and counting the cost and loving Jesus with all of their might, strength, mind, and heart, and soul.
Tell us the website in case people want to find out more or support the efforts.
IranChristians.org. Iran is the country, Christians plural, and then .org. So IranChristians.org is our website, and you can get the information there. Or if you are willing to go on one of our mission trips, which is very, very adventurous and fun, you're more than welcome to join us.
That's amazing. I am blown away. I hope folks will check out IranChristians.org. I was looking forward to this conversation, did some homework going into it, but this is a memorable, special one for me. for many reasons. So I hope people watching will check out the website, support what you're doing. This is really remarkable. Can't thank you enough for taking your time to come on.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Sean.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Before anyone else clicks away, make sure you hit subscribe, because we're trying to bring to you just encouraging, insightful, fascinating stories of what God is doing around the world. And so make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of these kind of stories. And if you thought about studying apologetics, which I'm sure in your interaction with Muslims and the work of Moore the Carpenter is hugely important today, we'd love to have anybody watching at Biola. We've got a full distance program. Would love to train you, whether it's in the Islamic world or beyond, to go do ministry there. We also have a certificate program. Check it out if you just want some formal apologetic training. Big discount below. Mohamad, such a treat. Thanks for your work and really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you. Have a great day.